48,000 years ago, a Neanderthal man died holding his pregnant partner. They were found locked in an embrace that lasted millennia. But here's what's even more shocking. When scientists analysed their DNA, our ancestors didn't just feel love, they felt it more intensely than we do today. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why modern relationships might be just a shadow of what love used to be. Chapter 1. Primate Passion. In the depths of the Congo rainforest, a female bonobo gently strokes the face of an injured companion, sharing food and providing comfort in a way that seems startlingly human. This isn't just random behavior, it's one of the most profound displays of empathy ever documented in non-human primates. But to understand why this observation shook the scientific community to its core, we need to journey back millions of years to when the first sparks of love began to flicker in our evolutionary past. For decades, scientists believed that complex emotions like love were uniquely human, a product of our advanced cognitive abilities. But in 1980, everything changed. Primatologist Frans de Waal was observing a colony of bonobos when he witnessed something extraordinary. A systematic pattern of conflict resolution through sexual behavior, grooming, and what could only be described as emotional bonding. These weren't just random acts of affection, they were calculated, intentional displays of emotional intelligence. If our closest living relatives could form such complex emotional bonds, what did this tell us about the evolution of love itself? When primatologists analysed the hormone levels in bonobos during these intimate moments, they found something fascinating: spikes in oxytocin, the same love hormone that floods human brains during moments of affection. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Bonobos showed higher baseline levels of oxytocin than their more aggressive cousins, the chimpanzees. This chemical difference helps explain contrasts in the primate world. While chimpanzee societies are marked by male dominance and aggression, bonobo communities are led by females and characterized by peaceful social bonding. It's as if nature ran two parallel experiments, one showing us what happens when aggression drives evolution, and another revealing the power of the emotional connection. But the story doesn't end there. Deep in the jungles of Gombe, Jane Goodall documented something that would further revolutionize our understanding of primate emotions. She observed a young chimpanzee named Flint, who, after losing his mother Flo, fell into what could only be described as a deep depression. Flint stopped eating, became withdrawn, and died just weeks after his mother's passing. This wasn't just grief. It was love in its most primal form. If chimpanzees could form bonds so strong that their loss could lead to death, then emotional attachment wasn't just a beneficial trait. It was crucial for survival. To understand how love evolved, we need to examine the fascinating difference between our two closest relatives, bonobos and chimpanzees. These species share 98.7% of their DNA with humans, making them perfect windows into our emotional past. Think of them as nature's controlled experiment. Two species that split from a common ancestor about 2 million years ago, developing radically different social structures and emotional capacities. In the world of chimpanzees, social bonds are primarily forged through displays of power. Males form coalitions, engage in territorial warfare, and establish strict hierarchies. But beneath this aggressive exterior lies something remarkable: the capacity for deep emotional attachments. Researchers have documented male chimpanzees sharing food with their friends, consoling defeated companions, and even adopting orphaned infants. These aren't just random acts of kindness, but it's in bonobo society where we see something truly remarkable. Unlike their chimpanzee cousins, bonobos have developed what anthropologists call an emotional economy. In this system, social status isn't determined by physical strength, but by the ability to form and maintain emotional connections. Female bonobos are the cornerstone of this society, using a complex network of friendships and alliances to maintain stability. The evidence for these emotional bonds goes beyond mere observation. When researchers analysed the brain structure of bonobos, they found enlarged neural pathways in regions associated with empathy and emotional regulation. The anterior insular cortex, a region crucial for emotional awareness, is more developed in bonobos than in chimpanzees. This biological difference creates what scientists call an empathy advantage, allowing bonobos to literally feel what others are feeling. In a study conducted in 2017, researchers presented bonobos with a series of photographs showing other bonobos in distress. Using eye-tracking technology, they discovered something remarkable. Bonobos focus longer on the eyes of distressed individuals, showing a level of emotional engagement previously thought unique to humans. Even more surprisingly, they would later seek out and comfort the individuals they had seen in the photographs, demonstrating not just emotional recognition, but emotional memory. This capacity for emotional memory isn't just a curious behavioral trait, it's a crucial evolutionary advantage. In the complex social world of primates, remembering who has been kind to you, who has supported you during conflicts, and who has shared food with you can mean the difference between survival and death. These emotional memories create what scientists call social capital, a network of relationships that can be called upon in times of need. When primates engage in grooming, sharing food, or other bonding behaviors, their brains release a cocktail of neurotransmitters: oxytocin, dopamine, and endorphins. This chemical signature is remarkably similar across all great apes, suggesting that the basic machinery for love evolved long before humans appeared on the scene. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. While both bonobos and chimpanzees show these chemical responses to bonding, bonobos maintain higher baseline levels of oxytocin and lower levels of stress hormones like cortisol. This chemical balance creates what researchers call a prosocial bias, a natural tendency toward friendly, cooperative behavior. This chemical predisposition towards sociality reveals something profound about the evolution of love. It wasn't just a happy accident. It was a powerful survival strategy that gave our ancestors a competitive edge. But to understand why, we need to examine what anthropologists called the emotional arms race. This created an evolutionary pressure that favored individuals with enhanced capacity for emotional connection. Each generation, those with stronger bonding abilities, had a slight advantage, leading to what scientists call emotional selection. It's similar to sexual selection, the process that gave peacocks their elaborate tails, but instead of selecting for physical traits, it selected for emotional capacity. The evidence for this emotional selection is written in our DNA. Geneticists compared the genomes of humans, bonobos, and chimpanzees. Certain genes associated with social bonding and emotional regulation show signs of positive selection, meaning these traits were actively favored by evolution. One such gene, AVPR1A, which influences social behavior and pair bonding, shows significant differences between bonobos and chimpanzees. Using advanced imaging techniques, researchers discovered that both bonobos and early humans experienced an expansion of brain regions associated with emotional processing. The amygdala, anterior cingulate cortex, and prefrontal cortex, all crucial for emotional regulation and social bonding, show evidence of rapid evolution. This brings us to the development of consolation behavior. When a primate is distressed, perhaps after losing a fight or experiencing a setback, others will often approach and offer comfort through physical contact, grooming, or food sharing. This behavior, known as consolation, was once thought unique to humans, but studies have shown that both bonobos and chimpanzees regularly engage in consolation, suggesting that the roots of empathy run deep in our evolutionary history. Modern research techniques have allowed us to observe these bonding behaviors in unprecedented detail. Using thermal imaging cameras, scientists can track the physiological responses that occur during primate social interactions. When two bonobos engage in reconciliation after a conflict, their body temperatures synchronize. a phenomenon also observed in human couples during moments of emotional connection. This temperature synchronization is accompanied by a surge of oxytocin, creating what researchers call a biochemical bridge between individuals. But this is just the beginning of our story. As we'll see in the next chapter, when love became uniquely human, something extraordinary happened. Chapter 2. When love became human. A Neanderthal man tenderly places flowers around the body of his deceased companion. This isn't imagination. It's a real archaeological discovery from Shenida Cave in Iraq, dated to roughly 60,000 years ago. The presence of pollen clusters suggests that these flowers were deliberately placed, creating one of the earliest known examples of ritualistic behavior associated with emotional attachment. But what's truly remarkable isn't just the flowers. It's what this tells us about when love became uniquely human. For years, we thought of Neanderthals as brutal, primitive beings, incapable of complex emotions. But recent discoveries have painted a radically different picture. DNA analysis from El Cedron Cave in Spain revealed something extraordinary. Neanderthals didn't just form random mating pairs. They established complex family units with evidence of long-term pair bonding that lasted generations. The story of human love begins roughly 300,000 years ago, when our species, Homo sapiens, first emerged in Africa. But we weren't alone. At least 6 other human species walked the earth, including our cousins, the Neanderthals, and denisovans. What happened next would change the course of human evolution forever. By analyzing the DNA of modern humans, they found something unexpected. Genetic markers indicating that early humans didn't just encounter other human species. They formed deep, lasting bonds with them. Up to 4% of non-African human DNA comes from Neanderthals, and some Asian populations carry up to 6% Denisovan DNA. This wasn't just casual interaction. It was evidence of successful long-term partnerships between different human species. But the real breakthrough came in 2018. They found the remains of a teenage girl whose DNA analysis revealed she had a Neanderthal mother and a Denisovan father. This wasn't just a chance encounter. Her bones showed signs of healthy development, suggesting she came from a stable, nurturing family environment where 2 different human species had formed a lasting bond. Not only were different human species capable of forming relationships, but they were also investing in long-term partnerships and successfully raising hybrid children. Unlike our primate ancestors, who primarily formed bonds based on immediate survival needs, early humans began creating symbolic representations of their emotional connection. Cave art dating back 35,000 years shows scenes of couples holding hands, families gathering, and groups engaging in social rituals. To understand how love became uniquely human, we need to examine what archaeologists call the behavioral revolution, a period roughly 70,000 years ago when human culture exploded with symbolic expression. Consider the Venus figurines, small sculptures of women found across Europe dating back 35,000 years. Initially, archaeologists thought these were merely fertility symbols, but new analysis reveals something else. The wear patterns on these figurines suggest they were handled frequently, passed between people, and often carried long distances. These weren't just art objects. They were physical manifestations of emotional attachment, possibly the world's first love token. When researchers analyzed the dental plaque of Neanderthals, they found something surprising: traces of medicinal plants with no nutritional value. Some of these plants are still used today for their pain-relieving properties. This suggests that Neanderthals weren't just caring for themselves, they were actively nursing others back to health, a behavior that requires significant emotional investment and long-term planning. Unlike earlier hominids who lived in loose, temporary groups, early humans and Neanderthals created structured living spaces with distinct areas for different activities. Archaeological evidence shows shared sleeping areas, communal cooking spaces, and designated spots for tool making, all indicators of complex social organization built around long-term relationships. This brings us to the emergence of social monogamy. Unlike our primate cousins who primarily form temporary mating pairs, early humans began establishing long-term, exclusive partnerships. But why? The answer lies in what anthropologists call the evolutionary puzzle of human childhood. Babies are born remarkably underdeveloped compared to other primates. They require years of intensive care and resources to reach maturity. This created a unique evolutionary pressure. Successful child-rearing required long-term cooperation between partners. Those who could form stable emotional bonds were more likely to raise successful offspring, creating a powerful selection pressure for the capacity to love. DNA analysis of ancient human populations reveals another fascinating pattern. Unlike other primates where male genetic diversity is typically higher, indicating that fewer males successfully reproduce, human populations show remarkably equal genetic contribution from both males and females. This suggests that early humans weren't just forming temporary mating pairs. They were establishing lasting, emotionally bonded partnerships where both partners were invested in the relationship's success. The evidence suggests that by around 30,000 years ago, humans had developed all the cognitive and emotional machinery necessary for modern-style romantic love. Cave paintings from this period show scenes that we can readily recognize. Couples embracing, families gathering, communities celebrating together. But this transformation came with a cost. As we'll explore in Chapter 3, the emergence of agricultural societies and permanent settlements would create new pressures on human relationships, leading to the development of complex social structures that continue to influence how we love today. The agricultural revolution of love. Around 12,000 years ago, people started farming. This wasn't just a change in how humans got their food. It was a revolution in how they loved. Researchers analyzed Sumerian clay tablets from around 3,200 BCE. Among the first things humans ever wrote down weren't just trade records or religious texts. They were love poems and marriage contracts. This suggests that as soon as humans could write, they felt compelled to document and regulate their emotional bonds. For the first time, humans had possessions that could be passed down through generations, fields, livestock, and permanent structures. This led to what anthropologists call descent group marriage, unions, arranged not just for emotional or reproductive purposes, but to maintain and transfer property. Unlike hunter-gatherer groups, where genetic diversity was maintained through frequent movement and partner exchange, agricultural societies show evidence of increasingly restricted mate choice. This wasn't just cultural, it was the beginning of what we now call the institution of marriage. Jewelry and ornaments worn exclusively by married individuals. They were the world's first wedding rings, symbols of a new kind of social contract. The impact of agriculture on human relationships becomes even clearer when we examine ancient settlements. In pre-agricultural societies, living groups typically numbered between 25 and 50 individuals, but early farming villages could support hundreds of people living in close proximity. This population density created what anthropologists call structured mating markets, complex social systems where partner choice became increasingly influenced by economic and social factors. Around 5000 BCE, there's a sudden shift in genetic patterns. Male genetic diversity decreases dramatically, while female genetic diversity remains stable. This suggests that certain men, likely those controlling more agricultural resources, were having significantly more children than others. The age of social inequality had begun, and it would profoundly impact human mating patterns. As farming communities grew, they began creating elaborate figurines and shrines dedicated to fertility deities. Unlike the simple Venus figurines of hunter-gatherer societies, these new religious objects often depicted couples together, suggesting that partnership, rather than individual fertility, had become central to human reproduction. These complex water management systems required cooperative labor and long-term planning, skills that would have favored couples who could work together effectively. Archaeological evidence shows that successful farming households often consisted of stable partnerships that lasted decades. This period also saw the emergence of love poetry. The world's oldest known love poem, the Sumerian Istanbul-2461, dated around 2037 BCE, speaks of desire, commitment and agricultural metaphors. My beloved, the delight of my eyes greets me. My sweet one, the delight of my eyes greets me. My beloved is like barley, it thrives even in adverse conditions. This wasn't just artistic expression, it was evidence that humans had begun to consciously reflect on and articulate their emotional experiences. Analysis of early legal codes provides even more insight into this transformation. The Code of Hammurabi, circa 1750 BCE, contained numerous laws regarding marriage, divorce, and property rights between spouses. By around 2000 BCE, the transformation was complete. Human relationships had become embedded in complex social institutions that would be recognizable to modern observers. Marriage had become a legal contract, love had become subject to social regulation, and partner choice had become influenced by economic factors in ways that continue to shape human society today. But this wasn't the end of love's evolution. As we'll explore in Chapter 4, the emergence of classical civilizations would bring new ideals about romantic love, creating cultural traditions that still influence how we think about relationships today. The agricultural revolution had laid the groundwork, but human love would continue to evolve in increasingly complex ways. Chapter 4, Modern Love. The story of how we went from cave paintings to swiping right is a testament to how dramatically technology has transformed human relationships. While our basic desires for connection haven't changed since our ancestors first developed pair bonding, the ways we find and maintain relationships absolutely did. When Tinder launched in 2012, it turned finding potential partners into a game-like experience that could be done from anywhere, at any time. For the first time in history, people could assess hundreds of potential partners in minutes, making split-second decisions based on visual first impressions. By 2024, over 75 billion matches had been made on Tinder alone. But this efficiency came with new challenges. Research shows that having too many options can lead to what psychologists call choice paralysis, the tendency to become overwhelmed and less satisfied when faced with too many possibilities. Studies show that while people have access to more potential partners than ever before, they're actually going on fewer dates. The average time spent looking at a profile before swiping is less than a second. About the same time our ancestors needed to determine if a rustle in the grass was a predator. The emergence of situationships, ghosting, and breadcrumbing reflects something our ancestors never had to deal with: the ability to maintain multiple potential relationships in a state of perpetual ambiguity. The rise of dating apps has created something entirely new in human history: the paradox of disposable intimacy. While our brains are still wired for deep connection, the endless scroll of potential partners has transformed relationships into what sociologists call liquid love: easily formed, easily broken, and increasingly temporary. The average Tinder user spends 90 minutes per day on the app, swiping through an average of 140 profiles. Yet research shows that only about 1.5% of these swipes lead to actual meetings. We're experiencing what researchers call romantic optimization, the constant feeling that a better match might be just one more swipe away. The increase in digital interactions before physical meetings can create a disconnect. This often leads to relationships that might not progress to the stability required for starting a family, as the digital-first approach can sometimes set unrealistic expectations or foster dissatisfaction. The paradox of choice, with the vast number of potential partners available, can instill the fear of missing out on a better match, leading to prolonged dating periods without commitment, which in turn delays or reduces the likelihood of having children. Furthermore, social media and dating apps amplify lifestyles and choices that are child-free, or focus on pets as family members. This trend not only normalizes these choices, but also promotes them, influencing younger generations to consider similar paths. By 2024, many countries in Europe and Asia are witnessing birth rates below replacement levels, with some nations experiencing rates as low as 1.2 children per woman. This trend, coupled with the transformation in dating and relationship formation, suggests that the population collapse is not merely a demographic issue, but also a reflection of changing social dynamics influenced by technology. In response, some governments are implementing policies to encourage childbirth. However, the challenge remains significant: how to foster stable, long-term relationships in a world where the very tools designed to connect us might be driving us apart, both emotionally and demographically. As we close this chapter, it's clear that we're not just witnessing changes in how people date. We're seeing the emergence of entirely new forms of human connection. The challenge for future generations won't be finding potential partners. It will be maintaining authentic relationships in an increasingly digital world and ensuring that the human desire for connection translates into the continuation of our species. Thank you all for watching. If you liked this video, you will also like our last video about what we really evolved to eat. Is it meat or plants? Please subscribe the channel so you won't miss the next video.